Today on Technically Creative, I talk with Verena Puhm, head of studio at DreamLab LA, the newly launched R&D studio from Luma AI. Verena brings over a decade of experience in international film and television. She's worked with CNN and BBC and Netflix, and many others, producing documentaries, series, commercials, and experimental AI content. At DreamLab LA, she leads the studio vision and a slate of boundary-pushing productions. DreamLab is quickly becoming the place where creatives come to play with technology, to test what it can do, and to help studios and storytellers keep pace with the speed of innovation. In this episode, we discuss how Verena sees the balance between artistic intuition and algorithmic possibility, what it takes to build tools that respect craft, not cheapen it, and how DreamLab LA is helping both established studios and emerging creatives adapt to the rapid technological change that we're seeing. It's a conversation about where technology and storytelling are headed, but to be honest, so are all of these conversations. But it also affects how the next generation of filmmakers can stay engaged and stay at the center of this change. Verena really is kind of one of these people that's being asked a lot of the questions and building the answers in real time. So I think you'll like this conversation. It's very interesting. Verena Puhm, head of studio at DreamLab LA. I'm really excited to talk to you because obviously Luma AI, which you guys are part of, you guys, DreamLab is the R&D arm of Luma AI. Luma's been creating incredible tech for quite a long time. You guys are getting to play with it and help define what modern filmmaking is going to look like. Can you just kind of tell me just about, your guys' mission at DreamLab and, and what you guys are up to? Because it's absolutely fascinating and I'm really excited.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel very blessed being in this position because I come from a traditional space. So I have been a writer, producer, director, and historically, as an independent filmmaker, especially, you do not really have the ability to shape the tools that you're working with. So I personally never had the opportunity to say, hey, I want the ARRI Alexa to do this and that, and for it to look like that and have these capabilities. And as we're venturing into this new era of mixing AI with traditional filmmaking tools, there's this incredible opportunity to, as an artist and as a creator, to shape the tools. And that's what I started doing when I started going into AI and I became a beta tester for a lot of those tools. And then really, Luma AI wanted to supercharge that. And I love that ideology of, hey, we don't want to just come from, Palo Alto and just be a tech company making a tool and then giving it to the creator. And the creators are like, what are we going to do with this? They really are focusing on what do the creators need, what makes sense to them, and listening to them. And that's basically what we are here for now. John Finger, who's a creative workflow executive at DreamLab LA, me as the head of studio, and we have a little team gathered now where we basically, one, help creators, traditional filmmakers, AI artists to create and shape the tools by them, giving feedback on the tools. And then us ourselves as well. So we're heavily embedded with the research team to test the new tools that are coming out. And then on the other hand, helping the studios, so the traditional Hollywood studios, to go into this new space and, helping with projects, building out their AI departments, whatever they need. They are, they have been a little bit slower to adapt. They just have a lot of, responsibilities. They can't just jump into it as much and as easily as an independent artist. But what is most important here is education. And I feel like that is something that I appreciate about the company really wanting to empathize with. Or empathize on, because without education, how do we build that bridge between traditional filmmaking and filmmakers that are still skeptic or scared to AI, to see and show them that you can actually leverage those tools in amazing ways?
Yeah. I mean, it's such a cool job that you've got. As you said, the idea of a creator influencing the technology, that used to be Stanley Kubrick when he made the
Exactly.
camera that could shoot in candlelight. James Cameron when he made the 3D
Hmm.
camera. It's a rarefied air traditionally to be in that place. And now I think that, with technology very firmly coming in and with all of these generative AI tools, the fact that, you're getting to be that conduit by which that information flows back to the technology creator is just so exciting.
It is really so, what's the right word? I felt like I had my agency back when I went into AI, just noticing how wonderful it is to not only create what is in my mind and not having to ask for permission or having to get the green light from gatekeepers that might just not have the style that I have or are not interested in the same subjects, but then also on top of that, really being able to shape the tools that I'm using is honestly historically something that I think has never happened before for somebody that's in the independent filmmaking industry. And now doing that, and I mean, it's in the AI community, we have so much more say. And that is beautiful. So democratization, is often used for how to make the movies, but it's also on how we shape the tools and that we really have a say. And I personally think that it's beautiful.
Yeah. Well, listen, I mean, it's fantastic. I mean, can you tell me more about, what Luma hopes to gain with this? Because when Luma first came out, my understanding was, their mission was that they wanted to build multimodal general intelligence that can
Yes.
generate, understand, and operate in the physical world. That always seemed to me like what they really wanted was an intelligence that could be used in things like robots, or it could look at a
Mm,
video of it through somebody's glasses and really understand the world that it was operating in. But obviously, as a natural byproduct of that, these tools can be used to generate incredible rich worlds all by themselves.
yeah.
So Luma seems to have this incredibly specific, well, incredibly long range general mission. But
Yeah.
then as a byproduct, they've realized these tools can be incredibly powerful in the entertainment space. What are they learning from entertainment that's helping in that broader mission? Or has this
Mm.
sort of just become an offshoot shoot that hopes to kind of generate its own, revenue and interest? What's happening there?
That's a great question. So yes, what drew me to Luma AI was that they had a bigger vision. So it didn't just stop at how we think and work in traditional filmmaking. We're trained to have a script, make a storyboard, make the shots and such, and all the processes in between. There's so many steps, right? But Amit looked at the bigger picture and was like, what do we want to achieve? And what's on the way. Filmmaking and video and imaging is part of it, right? And I think there's a lot to learn when it comes down to filmmaking because it is a reflection of reality in some sort, right? It's about processes, it's about understanding relationships, and that can be relationships between imagery. Let's say, we have roles when we're doing filmmaking. You never jump the 180 rule, or you have a shot reverse. You might have an over shoulder that should be the same color of the shirt of the person that you just had it on. So the understanding relational space and personas, I think there's a lot that can be learned from that.
That's very true.
And right. So
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that
The
that will
continuity, which is often seen as a sort of, an irritation on set and things like that. And AI is not particularly good at continuity, but you're right.
yeah,
Now it's become the lifeblood of modern storytelling is how can you ensure continuity of character, continuity of location, continuity of
yeah,
wardrobe and things like that. You're right. That's a kind of, we're realizing quite how important that is now that
yeah.
everything else is sort of possible.
Exactly. And then also prediction of the space, right? So let's say you make a video, and in that video, this person is entering a waiting room. And let's say, and I'm thinking way ahead, but bear with me on that. That's where I'm thinking, that this makes sense to me. It's like this person walks into a waiting room. Now, there's several different versions of reality that can happen next if they walk into that door in the waiting room. It could be a doctor's room, like it could be a dentist, it could be a hospital, just a doctor's room, it could be a therapist, it could be so many things, it could be a lawyer's office. And the question is if based on what you see in the image, the AI can predict what is going to be in the next room. And that's fascinating for me as well. Like if we're telling story, how much later on do we have to tell for AI to understand it versus we have to give them all the parameters, right?
Yeah. That's really interesting. I mean, I mean, how are you thinking about like people actually working with these tools? Because as you said before, the big studios, obviously there's the mid suit against Disney. The big studios have been naturally very reticent to put any output. They're definitely testing. They have testing teams internally and things like that. But in terms of actually outputting something, obviously they're very concerned that from a copyright standpoint, their work has been used to train a lot of these models, that they're concerned that they can't stand up for that in a real way if they're also using a tool that their output is trained on. Warner Brothers can't output something that's been trained on Disney's information and stuff like that. So I guess, you guys are sort of an R&D shop figuring out how these workflows are going to work. How do you see them, pre this copyright problem being solved? How do artists and organizations engage with AI in workflows that feel duly correct and proper?
Yeah. Well, first of all of the studios are testing the tools. You're absolutely right. We're speaking to a lot of them. We're also working with some of them. We personally we take our NDA seriously, so we're waiting for them to, be ready to
And as well
acknowledge
as
and
are we. I wanted
yeah.
to make
Yeah,
sure
yeah,
that the
yeah.
question isn't a
No,
gotcha, and I'm
no, no,
not,
no. No,
I'm just
absolutely.
that's what we're noticing. I wanted
Yeah,
to
yeah.
make.
No, but what I find interesting about studios is, I think they have a lot of shareholders to respond to and also the union. So they're very hesitant in openly admitting to what they're already exploring and what they're already doing. And Netflix was one of the first ones that actually said it openly. I think that helped make it more palatable. So I think this year is going to be a very interesting year to see who will move forward and actually just stand up and say, yes, we're using it. As far as the lawsuit goes for Midjourney,
Yeah, the Midjourney, Disney, NBC, Universal lawsuit.
yeah, here's the thing. When you think of how the models are trained and the data, and that's the reason of that lawsuit. We at Luma AI, our mission is to create a really, really good tool for creators to excel and prosper. Hollywood has been a really, really tough place in the past years. From anything, from COVID to the strikes to the streamers not paying enough anymore for independent artists, independent filmmakers to sell their project to and actually making money back and also studios, it's been hit so much that I think the structure doesn't work properly anymore. And if we can give the creators more power to just make their own and put it into channels that are working for them, if it's YouTube or TikTok, to monetize on their own creations, they're not giving away their IPs. They're not having to wait for permission. That is what is really empowering. Now, the studio suing Midjourney and saying you trained on our data because you trained on our data and the artists are not getting paid is a little bit of a faulty claim because in the end, if Midjourney is gonna pay any of these studios, who's getting the money? It's not
Well,
gonna
the
be the
the
individual artists.
Well, it depends on the waterfall arrangements with the artists. If they have back end compensation and things like that. But I totally appreciate your point.
Yeah.
And I think that was one of the things that we heard from the WGA. We engaged with the WGA very early on because we were engaging with scripts with AI. And, one of the things the WGA sort of said, and I hope I'm not telling stories out of school, but they said, a lot of the artists are very angry at the AI models. But the fact is, if Quentin Tarantino is angry at OpenAI, at the end of the day, if his script was used to train, he doesn't own that script anymore. If your script has not been produced, then you still own it, but it also probably wasn't in the data sets that was ingested. And if it was produced, well, then the studio likely owns it, and they're not saying anything. That was at the time. Now, obviously, Disney is speaking up.
Yeah, also the idea of how the models train on the data, it is not a input equals output. The models are trained on relations. So as long as you're not giving it exactly everything to produce a script that is a Tarantino script, you won't get a full-on Tarantino script, right? So it's more on relations. Like if it was Wes Anderson and it's about, Wes Anderson has a very distinct style. So, you have the symmetry, you have the particular pastel colors, for instance. So, of course, you can say, hey, I want pastel colors and I want people in, symmetrically in the shot, and then you will get something that kind of looks like Wes Anderson's style, because it's also probably not copyrightable, I guess. Or you can say Wes Anderson, right? Which then that's the responsibility of the artist not to use that, because that's just a blatant ripoff, right? But generally, how the models are trained, they're not trained to give you exactly what you input. So there's also a faulty thinking on that.
Yeah, I mean, listen,
Yeah.
I won't drag you into the copyright battle and rake you over the coals with it. I
Sure.
mean, I think that, I think that the sensitivity is certainly still there, and I think that that
Yeah.
impacts the workflows that you guys are trying to research and develop. And I think that generally there seems to be a view, at least that I've noticed at the studios, where AI that helps with workflows in the production process. So if you're using AI to help you budget, if you're using
Hmm.
AI to help you schedule, if you're using AI to break down a script so that you can understand it better and it speeds up your workflow, that seems
Hmm.
to be generally considered okay. I think that actually it's where the generative output becomes consumer facing, and that consumer is obviously paying somehow, whether by subscription or by transaction, to consume that. Now there's a transaction and there's a sort of question, I guess. Are
Hmm.
you finding that there are workflow solutions that can be implemented now that you're seeing, and that actually there might be a slight delay on the generative output? Or are you sort of preparing for both just as fast? How are you thinking of?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's very important. And that is something that we also empathize on. And I particularly, because I come from the traditional spaces, I think the intention is very important. And if the intention is to not cut out actors, writers, performers, then you can have a really great workflow with the tool. So let's give you an example. You should still write your own script. Like you should, I don't believe in ChatGPT and how it's writing scripts. Anytime I've tried it, it just comes up with something that I genuinely don't like. So after that, creating imagery and video, for instance, I believe in the power of performance. And I heavily enjoy real performance of real people, right? So not only a real life experience that is reflected in the script, but also somebody acting it out where I have this connection with them on a deeper level when I see it. And Modify Video, for instance, one of our tools enables that. You can still have a performance, and John Finger, posts about that every day. You still have a performance, you have an actor perform a scene, but then you change everything around it. You change the clothes, you change the background, you change the objects. And I think that is something that is super interesting for the studios and also for anybody that wants to play, because we're getting back to a point where we're not all just hustling in Hollywood and everything is so hard, and getting a script to screen takes 8 years, and it's a tedious process, but we actually can play again and we can be excited and inspired. And especially Modify Video, I feel like that is
Mhm.
doing that for a lot
Yeah.
of professional artists and the studios as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's the point, is that unlike most tools that came out, like the 3D camera that came out, that was one piece of technology that did a specific thing, and other changes to the filmmaking process occurred after and around it. But
Hmm.
what's happening now is that AI is affecting every single stage of the process all at the same time. And I think that, like, when you're in a situation where you can get a budget, you can get a business plan together. I mean, that's another crucial aid
Yeah.
to independent filmmakers as they're raising money to do it in a traditional stance. But it's still, something, an AI building you a business plan and building you a budget based on your idea. That's a one way that AI is influencing that. Flawless AI, for example, is doing just mouth dubbing. It's a very specific tool that is ensuring that if you're looking at a Hollywood movie in Spain, the actors' mouths, when it's dubbed over, are moving and speaking in Spanish. And I think that there are some things that really raise the heckle of artists. I think there are some things that really raise the heckles of business affairs and lawyers in studios. And there are lots of other things that are sort of fine, and I think that, as you said, even from the prompting of video, on the back end, if you're able to track all of your prompts for everything you've ever outputted, and I think that what we're going to see is when you're delivering the final film, probably for your errors and omissions insurance, you're probably going to have to deliver a pack of every single
Yes,
prompt you used all along the path to make sure that you never referenced Wes Anderson, that you never went
exactly.
referenced Quentin Tarantino, that you everything was at very least in its conception drawn from your mind, described by you, and never ever ideologically leaned on any other existing IP.
Yeah. Also, one thing that I always emphasize is to any artist is make sure first that you copyright the script, right? A lot of artists that are in the independent space, they forget about it. Copyright the script, first thing. Copyright office, WGA West, get that done. Then show a human touch on every aspect of it, right? So even if it's you're making some images, but the images should be based on your prompts that are just a little bit more than just a boy walks down the street. That's very random. So there should be some, detail, some level of detail that shows it is coming from your brain. And then on top of that, I would say take that image, change it a little bit in, your photo editor like Photoshop to show, okay, I worked on this, I changed it. That's my human touch. And then put it in, a video model and again, edit it creatively. Show in every step of the way that you were part of this. And it was not just a boy walks down the street, very random, image, video, done. That will help you, especially documenting it, will help you then, being able to copyright the whatever the project is, if it's a short film or a long format or whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I mean, that's another thing that everybody sort of forgets is that, human intervention and being able to prove your human intervention is actually what
Yeah.
makes technically at present, you are not able to copyright anything that comes directly out of a language model or a multimodal model, really, unless you can prove to one that you didn't lean on any existing IP, and two that there was enough human intervention that you changed it enough that it became yours, and that you can then say, this isn't public domain information anymore, this is avowedly mine because I intervened enough.
Exactly. So
um
always
Sorry, go ahead.
screenshot, screen record, all of those things. Whoever
Yeah,
is listening, do
yeah.
it. Get all your documentation together
Mhm.
because it's good to have it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So listen, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean for us to dwell in the copyright conversation.
It's an important one. Like I'm not shying away from it because it is an
Yeah.
important one, and I come from a tradition of filmmaking, so it's part of the conversations that I have. So I'm
Yeah.
I'm happy to talk through it.
Well, thank you, and I'm and you handled it great, and thank you for doing it. And now we'll
Well,
get on to the fun stuff.
here's the thing. I want to say one thing about this. I
Sure.
think as we're venturing into this AI space, the only way to move forward, because we're creating a new space,
Yeah.
entirely new space that we can decide on how we behave and not let bad actors in first place. So what does that mean? In my opinion, it means transparency and trust. That needs to be built. We have to be honest about things. We have to be able to speak about the hard topics, and only then we can actually have everybody feel comfortable to be part of it and want to play. So I don't mind having these conversations if it leads to someone feeling more ready and educated and wanting to try it out because now they know what they should do, what they should not do. They feel like they had someone taking their hand and leading them by the hand. That's also part of Dreamlab LA. We're here to demystify the whole process and make people get a little bit more comfortable and have someone to talk to and that is transparent about this. So that's what I stand for, and that's, I think, what needs to happen in this space. We cannot beat around the bush about certain
No,
topics.
I agree, and I think that there's this feeling at the moment that anybody who engages with AI is tacitly approving of everything that every tech company does with it. And I fundamentally, I mean, listen, I'm an investor in Anthropic, and I still disagree with the fair use argument against Anthropic, and so I think that there's, there is a duality that one can hold these two things to be true at the same time. And we don't have to just tacitly agree with everything. And especially as people who have worked in the creative industries for a long time, I think it's important that we engage with these tools as fast as we possibly can to make sure that the people who are making decisions in 5 years remember what the creative industries were like before all this happened, and that those are the people with the hard-won experience who have the opportunity to still have their voices heard at the table.
Exactly. And because the access to these tools is getting better and better and easier, I want other people than historically leading the film and entertainment industry. The possibilities are endless right now. Our whole landscape could look so much more interesting, diverse in voices in the movies that we see, the shows that we see, that could actually inform us as people and make us more accepting of each other. And that I think that AI will do because someone that is not sitting in Hollywood, that is not as privileged as even we are, right, will make an incredible project that could be the next Star Wars. And it will come from a different part of the world and they will have a seat at the table just because they have been creative. And that's the only qualifier here. Because the tools took care of, what is the hurdle, the high budgets, the budget approvals, the tech, and that is highly, highly fascinating and interesting to me.
Yeah. I mean, listen, and like you were sort of saying before, I think that the studios are testing this stuff because they know they need to output more. And I think that that's the other thing is that the notion that that somebody said something that I really like, where they said no new technology has ever created less work. We just
Yes,
adjust our output. We just start creating more. And I think that the studios know they are creating still at the pace of an old distribution system, a distribution system that required negative to go out to box offices and cinemas around the world. And that old distribution system is worked for the old model. And now we have an infinite worldwide distribution system. You can upload something on YouTube and it is worldwide distributed in 30 seconds. And they know they need to output more. And so I think that that's the other thing people are forgetting is that when they engage, they're not going to be engaging with these tools and just having the same 100 films that they output every year. It's going to be 700 films and then it's going to grow from there. I mean, so
exactly.
how are you seeing the difference, because obviously we've talked a little bit about how studios are coming into it slowly and where they're feeling okay about using some of it. How are you engaging with artists and what are you seeing in terms of how artists are coming at it? Are you finding that it's a lot of artists who are existing creators? Are you seeing a lot of new creators coming into this space? And what are you noticing about the differences in those two? And how are you engaging with
Yeah.
artists?
Yeah. So I think there's AI artists that come from traditional filmmaking, especially like visual effects, editing. They have some kind of background. Mostly, honestly, editors or visual effects artists are really, really good at AI because they understand how to think in a way where they have to problem solve the shot. And so when they use AI, they know if this doesn't work, yeah, if this doesn't work, I can always fall back to my other, skill set. But they also think more in layers, like compositing wise, for
Right.
instance, or timing
Yeah,
wise
they go, I
as an
like that
editor.
element there. I'll rotoscope
Yeah.
out that. I'll move that over here. Great. That gets that little rock in this area done. I'll start working on the rest. Yeah.
Exactly. So that
Yeah.
helps with, not just clicking the button 30 times in order to get what you want, but actually being like, oh, this is something I can work with, right? Editors are really great because they understand story. So they will kind of look from the limited amount of footage they have usually and like, how am I going to tell this story now? So they're mostly have an easy transition because they're like, okay, what is the story that I want to tell? How many shots do I need for that? Which shots do I need for those? Okay, I'm just going to start with this. Oh, this is not working. Let me do this. While I would say more directors, camera, and let's see, I have to think about that. I would say people that are more tactile, they have a harder time because currently we're still in the space where a lot of time you have to prompt. And a DP is not prompting. He's not saying, or she's not saying this and that, right? Or they're not saying that. They actually want just move the camera, like, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
physically. They
And
wanna move
nobody
their
understands their
body.
lens choices anyway. No one knows what the lights, like they haven't had to explain their job to anyone since they
Yeah.
went to school for it.
Exactly. So it is interesting to see how they sometimes struggle with, okay, wait, how do I put this in Word now? I just want the light to move. Like, how do I get the light over there? They're really good with general terms, yeah, like lenses and the lighting terms, but then when it's about in the space, how do I stage it? It's so much harder for them. So that is something I think that AI tools will have to take on, and that's also something that we're very passionate about. You can ask John Finger. He's super passionate about this. He's like, I want to solve this because he wants to really make it a playground. He believes in that filmmaking should be something that is fun and it's great to explore and not so tech heavy, so people have this hurdle. And like when we started out some years ago, you had to go into Discord to create images and you had to prompt very differently than you prompt now, but that's still there's still a hurdle because you have to put in words what you usually don't put in words when you're on set. So we'll see where that goes for
Yeah,
sure.
right. But so what is the vision? I mean, because obviously you're working direct with studios. They have modern production apparatus, and you're advising on how to either build up an AI first studio within that production apparatus, or advising on where, and it's very similar to what we're doing. We're advising where AI can suit itself, where AI tools can suit themselves within your existing production process. But your vision in working with artists, are you hoping or expecting to be a modern AI studio working directly with artists, or are you guys really going to stay an R&D shop where all of the information is just learnings? How do you see yourselves growing in that way?
Yeah, we're getting a lot of studios and production companies. They're super interested in us, so we're getting a lot of people asking us if we wanted to partner on projects with them and actually make it. A lot of them are like, "Can you make it?" And I'm like, "We're not that big of a team yet to take on this, but we can help you, and we can train your team. We can hire the team for you, and we can take some of the load off. But mostly, we want to honestly, we want to teach." Them how to fish rather than just give them the fish, because that's not the idea. The idea is not to hog all of the projects and then make it for them, but really help everyone to move into this next phase. I'll say this, our goal is to make the best tools. And in order to make the best tools, there are projects that we're working on that are facilitating that. So there's sometimes, a studio or an independent artist comes to us and says, hey, I have this project. Would that be something of interest? And we look at the project and we're like, oh, this is actually a great use case for this that we're working on. Maybe, it's a beta version, or maybe we thought about working on it. And then we can use this as just a researching production where we create the tool or make the tool better as we go, but we're also making a beautiful narrative project, for instance. So there are these opportunities. We are different, though, to other AI studios that are solely focusing on creating an ROI with the IPs that they're putting out. So that is the difference right now, because I feel like it's also really hard to sell these projects. Some of them are not aging well because the
Right.
technology is not there 100% yet,
Yeah.
right?
And yeah, and suddenly something, I mean, it was like in 2005 or 6, this Canon 5D came out, and then literally in documentaries everything was crushed blacks and and stylized in
Yeah,
camera, and you just started to look at all documentaries and be like 5D, 5D,
yep,
7D, 5D, 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 like and and
true.
and it really dated everything. I mean, all the
Yeah,
documentaries from 2005 through 2010 look very similar, and
yeah,
short little focal length, and and very highly stylized in camera. And I think that, yeah, like when we spoke to Tom Payton on this, and he did Where the Robots Grow.
yeah, he's a
Lovely
friend. I
guy.
love him. Yeah,
Yeah, and it's like, and you can, I think that you're right. Like these shifts that are happening in character permanence, and people starting to work with Laura's, and really figure out how to make characters permanent throughout things. And but they're not perfect, and you start to see, okay, it's great when he's straight on, but that character in profile, it hasn't really gotten that right from successive things. And you're right. Yeah, there's a real dating that can be as the difference of 6 to 9 months.
Yeah, and I think when you think of the average consumer, kids probably won't care as much. They just want to have a cool
Yeah.
story that they're
Yeah.
watching. They're probably easy in that
Well,
sense,
Coco
but
Melon is
adults,
proof that they don't care about quality.
exactly. No shade to Cocomelon if anyone's listening.
No, shade to Coco Melon. Everybody jump in the comments and have a go. I'm fine with it.
Yeah, so kids are fine, but if you have adults that are not in the AI space, it's probably going to be harder for them to receive it because they're like,
Yeah.
oh, this doesn't look good. However,
Mhm.
in the AI industry, I think it's very endearing because we know this was done before this and that
Yeah.
tool came out.
Yeah.
You try to solve it like this. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Cool idea. So we can appreciate on a whole different level, which is lovely and wonderful. But the question is it going to be financially is it going to be financially successful in the outside world based on
Right.
all of these, you know, uh, visual issues that
Right.
are still maybe, popping up?
So it's interesting. So when you guys look at a project to take on, you don't necessarily look at it from a, not that you don't look at it from a creative standpoint, but you don't look at the IP or look at the story being told or whatever else and go, yes, we want to be a part of telling that story. You go, what is the problem being solved here? And what are we going to grow the most from? And give the most back to the film industry. Like, what is the tool that we're going to create that's going to give the most to the film industry? That's the creative vision that you guys are engaging with the most, rather than necessarily the storytelling creative vision. It's a broader industry wide
Yes,
participation.
yes, and selfishly because I'm a writer and I have seen what Holly, yeah, exactly, and what Hollywood has historically produced. I'm probably wanting to support stories that have not been told before and that actually shape the new industry that we're creating. So personally, those are the stories where I'm like, this is a great story. How can we? What tool can we use in order to make this? And maybe we can shape it. So that's just me as like where I see I can shine is just really helping independent creators that are incredibly amazing and talented, but didn't have the chance based on biases and history. That's where I want to be a champion of because those stories, I think we could learn a lot. So not only for the tool side, but also as a society. And I'm honestly just really, really bored of what Hollywood has put out in the past and want to change that. So yes, and for sure.
Right. Okay. Well, no, of course. Yeah, it's hard to turn that instinct off. But yeah,
Yeah.
listen, I think that like, and I think that like we said about keeping two things being true at the same time. I think that that's there's two different levels of creativity happening now. There's creativity about the complete reformulation of the production process and how to engage with technology to make changes to the industry that are permanent or that are semi-permanent or that are great principles in which to guide around. And then there's obviously the absolutely boundless creativity one can bring to a project now. You don't have to wait for an executive at a studio anymore to tell you that your idea might be marketable. And that is no longer a barrier to you getting a what looks like a multi-million dollar job off the ground.
Exactly. So for me, that's just like if you're not inspired by that as an artist and
Yeah.
a creator, like please try out the tool and see what it does because you have all the power in your hands now, and it's just about up to you how much time you want to spend. And there's one thing that I will say, you will have to dig into technology. So any creator right now in the AI space is a creative technologist, and that sometimes feels daunting and a little bit overwhelming because you're dealing with a language that you've not dealt with before. But for me, it was the most empowering thing. If you had told me 5 years ago that I would create workflows for, studios or for anybody that wants to do an AI project, I would have been like, why? Why me? Right? I'm a writer, I'm a producer, I'm a creative. But yeah, but isn't it beautiful that we can step into technology and actually live on both sides and understand and be the bridge for other people to explain and educate about that? I think that's, yeah, again, that was really empowering for me to see, especially as a woman, to see, oh, wait a minute, I can be in tech. There's nobody telling me I'm not allowed to or I can't do
Yeah.
this. Yeah.
Well, I had the same, but not by being a man, but by being dumb. So I can be dumb and still be in tech. It's fantastic. But I think that, like, I think it's an interesting point because my background is as a producer, and my tools for being a producer was an Excel spreadsheet of a
Yeah.
budget and a calendar app, and what, like,
Yep.
those were the tools. And now that the tools have become more powerful to be able to help me do my job, I see creating workflows for producers and creatives as just another part of being a producer. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
to me, it's the same thing. I put a budget together, I figure out who the experts are who are going to come in and create this problem solving piece of technology, and then I
Yeah.
go do it in exactly the same way I would have produced a commercial before.
So yeah, it goes back to anybody that comes from traditional filmmaking,
Mm,
such a heavy skill set that you're still going to use.
mm,
It's not that you're not going to use any of, what you've learned in the past.
mm.
That informs how you make movies anyways. Anybody that comes from that space, please don't forget about that. That is
Yeah.
highly important.
So let's say, I mean, for example, you were talking about the teams and the kind of setups of new modern creative operations. Let's say you were talking to either a studio or a production company that's trying to sort of upskill. What do you think the ideal infrastructure is from a sort of human standpoint, where you go, okay, you need a production lead and a creative lead, or a creative technologist and a creative technologist producer. Then you need X amount of, I mean, what
Mhm.
does that look like from a human and tech makeup of that ideal new team?
Yeah. I would say as far as studios go, they usually want a liaison between a A-list director
Hmm.
and the tech slash creative team.
Hmm.
So that position, I've been asked a lot to fill that position,
Yeah.
to just, communicate to the director that might have not had the opportunity yet
Yeah.
to dive into it. And then on the tech
And
creative
and that
team,
oh sorry, and that
yeah,
person, that liaison, are they usually a producer type of person, or are they a creative director type of person?
it is a very good question because when I started out, creative director was my title. And then I talked to some studios and they're like,
Right.
well, you probably will be a producer. And
Right.
I was like,
Right. Okay.
potato, potato. For me, it's like
Right.
I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm happy to get
Yeah.
a producer title, right?
Yeah.
Never say no to a producer credit.
Yeah,
Okay, guys.
exactly.
So yeah, it would be
It's
a
the one
producer, but
rule in
it's a
Hollywood that still applies.
exactly. And if you can get an executive producer title, guys, then you're
Yeah,
then you're
exactly.
so, but yeah, so the producer, obviously, there's different kind of producers. There's
Mm,
producers that are more creative than other producers, and there are producers that are more involved than others. But it would be a producer title, but still being in some way, shape, or form creative because they talk to the director. The director says, "I want this," and then this person is like, "Okay, can we make this work? How can we make this work? Okay, let me communicate to my team. Let's put, a heavily tech person onto how to create that workflow. We're going to have some visual effects artists anyways as well because we need them. So basically from the director to that producer to some kind of producing system, right? There can be a producer and then a production manager, production coordinator, depending on how big the project is, and then having the creative team, which is definitely somebody. And I feel like there's a bridge between the traditional one where you have, for instance, the production designer will work with somebody that is like more focusing on AI so they can help translate the production design into, working with the AI tools to getting that done. And then you have AI artists. And these AI artists, honestly, it depends on the project. We had projects, a really big one before I joined Luma AI that was, at that time, it was huge. It was 16 people, 35 minutes, fully AI generated. And we had three people dedicated on creating the images. And then we had the other people creating the videos and making a rough cut of it to kind of figure out if it works. Then we had an editor actually, creating the real cut, and we had actors that were doing the performance, and then visual effects artists that were working on, fixing things in the shots. So
mhm.
depending on how big the project is and how long the project takes, it will shift a little bit.
Yeah.
on who's doing what and how many people you need,
Mhm.
but something like that.
Is it a good rule of thumb that you still want your heads of department to be traditional heads of department working with the director to set a vision, and then you then want their AI counterpart that would act as their, their sort of, production team. So the production
Yeah.
designer works with somebody who's mainly thinking about that, wardrobe, et cetera, et cetera.
I think that's good for the studios. So then they see, oh, we don't have to replace everyone and we still can work with production designers are incredible. Like they have so many years behind them
Mhm.
where they had like, done really great, amazing things and they've learned how to do this for a long time. So I think there's a lot to learn from that. But there will be other departments where an AI artist that actually maybe has worked in a traditional space or that has done incredible work in the AI space that has proven himself, hey, this person has an amazing style. We want them to be the art director or production designer. So I think that can shift. I mean, people are not one dimensional. We all have done many, many, many different things in our past.
I so appreciate you taking the time to chat with us. It's been so fascinating. And I think that what you're doing over there is really just, I mean, it just sounds like a fun job, I mean, and
It
so
is.
I'm
It
very
really
jealous
is.
apart from anything else.
Honestly, if you told me some years ago, hey, you're going to have a job like this and you're playing every day, you're getting paid for it, and it's actually with amazing people, I would have been like, really? This sounds too good to be true. It's not. I'm really happy that they decided on starting the Dream Lab LA and our doors are open. We want to help creators as much as studios. And if you ask John Finger, he definitely wants to help the creators more because he loves them and he wants to make sure that they prosper in this whole
Mhm.
new arena. So we want to be champions of the people.
Well, yeah, I mean, it just sounds like a really fun, creative playground and, with a lot of good toys to play with and, a lot of fun things happening. So we'd love to as well have you back, whenever you next have a piece of work you want to shout about, we'd love to have you back and see it and talk about how you made it. And, if you'd be open to that, we'd love to have you.
Absolutely. I would love that.
Well,
Anytime.
Verena Puhm, thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Orlando.
Take care. Bye bye.
Bye.